Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Here we are in the middle of the week already. It's a Wednesday. It's July 8th. Hope you're doing well. Great to have you along. We appreciate your listenership, your viewership. Thank you for your support of EWTN and all of our outlets. We have a great lineup for you. I think you'll really enjoy it. You've heard me many times speak about the wonderful Dr. Elizabeth Lev. She is a renowned art historian, author, international speaker, and she's a top guide in Rome with over 25 years in terms of leading tours and also running an expert guide company. She is just so full of knowledge about all things Rome and Italy in general, and she's going to join us this morning at 15 minutes past the hour. EWTNnews.com had a beautiful story online, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about the restoration of the Renaissance frescoes in the Hall of Raphael in the Apostolic Palace. Now, this is the palace where the Pope resides. And if you remember, if you ever see the wonderful videos that we carry through the Vatican website and we stream every weekend when you see the Holy Father either doing the audience or doing the apostolic message from the apartment in the Apostolic Palace, the Angelus message on Sunday, that is from the Apostolic Palace. So it's the top floor, I think it's second window from the right. And on Sundays, it's normally not from the loggia. Loggia is really for mainly big announcements, but the audience is done in the general part of St. Peter's Square. But when he's giving the Angelus message on Sundays, they open the windows looking out onto St. Peter's Square, and they hang down the Vatican flag. So that's how they give you the sign that he's ready to come out, and that's the actual window. But the Apostolic Palace is a beautiful place, needs a lot of work and a lot of repairs, and this particular area is very important in terms of Renaissance art and primarily the artist Raphael. And so I couldn't think of anybody better to speak with about this than Liz Lev, because she's such a wealth of knowledge on all things art, and especially the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. She's a devout Catholic, she loves the faith, and she loves to share the faith through beauty. And we'll discuss with Dr. Liz. And then for Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, this is going to be a lot of fun. I just kind of thought about this and reading about the Holy Father and staying in Castel Gandolfo for the rest of July. And I thought, we are going there for our wonderful pilgrimage with Dr. Bunson and the footsteps of the popes in October. We still have a few seats left. So I thought I would have Matthew come on with us and share his knowledge in terms of the importance of Castel Gandolfo, this location in the Alban Hills, sitting above beautiful Lake Albano. It is a great place you can quickly visit from Rome to get away for an afternoon or even an evening, but there's a lot of history behind it. So we'll talk with Shrines and Wonders, I should say, with our friend Dr. Matthew Bunson from EWTN. And then Joan Lewis is joining us stateside this time to talk about the Pope and his messages from Castel Gandolfo, and of course his beautiful message that he gave to the United States of America over the weekend for our 250th anniversary. Joan is, as I said, still in the United States. She was visiting friends for the 4th of July holiday, so she'll give us an update and also on how that's going. That should be fun. So Joni joins us for our usual time with her on a Wednesday. So we have all kinds of wonderful experts with us the first hour: Dr. Liz Lev, Matthew Bunson, and Joan Lewis. Second hour in our 2 cent segment. There's so many places that Deacon Dom and I have been the last couple of weeks. We really try to use our weekends while we're still here in Italy to explore different places, especially those related to the saints. And we went to some place really cool related to St. Rita of Cascia. Not just Cascia, because we've been there before, but her hometown, which is about 5 or 6 miles from Cascia. It was really beautiful. We'll tell you about that. And also about a kaleidoscope of colors in Umbria that happens once a year. So we'll discuss that in our 2 cents. And then we are going to be speaking again with Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman. They've been on with us before. They have a powerful ministry talking about reclaiming sexual health and how to heal your marriage if there's been issues with that in your marriage. So it's a powerful ministry that they have and an important discussion that we will have with them in the second hour of Catholic Connection. And that will be, of course, on EWTN's Radio Extra. Weather-wise, we still have some problems with rain. The National Weather Service is saying look for severe thunderstorms and heavy rain in the Central Plains to Upper Midwest. Extreme heat in parts of the South. More specifically, those thunderstorms with severe wind gusts and hail will be possible today across parts of the plains and from the Missouri Valley into the upper Mississippi Valley. Heavy rain associated with the thunderstorms may also produce flash flooding. And then we've got concerns with critical fire weather conditions expected in the Great Basin and the interior Northwest, and dangerous heat continuing across the southwest and the southeastern parts of the country. That's a look at our rundown for today on a Wednesday. It is July 8th. Great to be with you. Also gave you a quick look at the weather right now, though. We have to get to the news. It is 5 minutes past the hour already here on EWTN. President Trump saying the fragile ceasefire with Iran, in his opinion, is over.
As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars.
The U.S. Treasury Department also moving on Tuesday to reimpose sanctions on the state of Iranian oil, immediately sending the price of crude up. Meanwhile, Mark Mayfield tells us a NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte saying the recent round of U.S. strikes on Iran were absolutely necessary.
The U.S. hit dozens of targets in Iran overnight after Iran attacked commercial oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking from Turkey, where a NATO summit is underway, Rutte said that Iran had violated the ceasefire agreement with the U.S. and that a U.S. response was crucial. Iran is accusing the U.S. of violating a memorandum of understanding signed last month and said it has responded with attacks on U.S. targets in Bahrain and Kuwait. I'm Mark Mayfield.
And the president is again calling for U.S. control of Greenland, threatening to pull all U.S. forces out of Europe because of the continent's opposition to that idea.
We need it for protection of the world, not just the United States. And it's very important. It doesn't help Denmark, but it helps us. And it's very important for us.
Speaking at the NATO summit in Turkey, the president said Denmark doesn't spend any money to help the semi-autonomous territory of Greenland, which he claimed is surrounded by Chinese and Russian ships. Europe's position is that the future of Greenland is up to the people of Greenland and Denmark. The president saying he could remove U.S. forces from Europe, arguing the continent has changed over the last 20 years because of immigration. He accused NATO of never being there for the United States, even though the only time the Alliance Mutual Defense Pact was activated was after the 9/11 attacks. France's National Assembly has approved an assisted suicide bill that would allow adults suffering, they say, from advanced or terminal illnesses to medically end their lives. The text will now continue its parliamentary process before the final vote is scheduled for next week. The approval, though, marking a milestone in French legislation by introducing for the first time the possibility that the state authorizes the deliberate administration a change in the conception of the role of medicine, traditionally oriented toward curing, relieving, and accompanying the patient, never toward intentionally causing their death. A police agent says a man accused of killing Charlie Kirk in Utah had interacted with members of Turning Point USA just hours before Kirk was killed. During a week-long evidentiary hearing, David Hull describes how someone believed to be Tyler Robinson was seen on surveillance video.
He heads out of the parking garage on foot into the campus and actually goes to the quad area of the campus. At that time, he makes contact with some representatives from TPUSA.
Hull did not elaborate on what was said between Robinson and members of Kirk's Turning Point organization. The judge set to decide if there is enough evidence against Robinson to proceed to trial for killing Kirk at Utah Valley University last year. The hearing marks the first time the conservative activist widow Erica Kirk and his parents have been in the same room with the man accused of killing him. Andrew Whitman tells us much of Midtown Manhattan's east side is returning to normal. This after evacuation orders were eased near the unstable high-rise.
For much of Tuesday, a chunk of Midtown East was closed to vehicles and pedestrians from 40th to 45th Streets between 1st and 3rd Avenues. Around 10 p.m. Tuesday night, officials lifted those restrictions, though 5 buildings will remain empty. Vehicular traffic is restricted on 42nd and 43rd Streets. If you live or work there, you will be allowed access. Crews inside are continuing work to try and stabilize the building. In New York, I'm Andrew Whitman.
Two Supreme Court justices set to testify next week on Capitol Hill about their annual budget request to Congress. Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett will appear on July 14th before the House Appropriations Subcommittee that handles Supreme Court spending. It will be the first time since 2019 that Supreme Court justices have actually testified on their annual budget request. The High Court is requesting a boost of over $14 million to the next fiscal year to increase security for the 9 justices. And Matt Madison tells us the Supreme Court is declining to block Texas's App Store Accountability Act.
The measure requires imposing age verification and parental consent requirements on app stores as well as developers. Students, along with the Computer and Communications Industry Association, sued to stop the Texas law, arguing it violates the Constitution's First Amendment on free speech. Justices denied requests by the challengers on Monday to lift a lower court's decision that allowed the law to take effect while litigation continues. The measure reflects broader efforts by some states to regulate smartphone use by children and curb the potentially harmful effects of social media. I'm Matt Mattinson.
This Saturday, the Holy Father will have lunch with around 200 of the poor located inside Castel Gandolfo. They'll have this at the Pontifical Gardens. The initiative, called Lunch with the Pope, will begin with the celebration of the Eucharist using the liturgy for the care of creation, followed by a moment of welcome and refreshments, a guided visit, and a shared meal with the Holy Father. The gathering, building on an initiative first launched last year when Pope Leo shared lunch with poor people from the Diocese of Albano in Italy. The encounter has since become an annual event promoted by the Lazzo Si Center for Higher Education, which oversees the department of the Lazzo Si project. Now, each year, a different diocese will be invited to bring together the poor, refugees, migrants, and others experiencing troubles, offering them a day immersed in the beauty of creation and an opportunity to meet the Holy Father. And we'll talk more about this at the bottom of the hour with Dr. Matthew Bunson, but there is new attention on the lakeside village of Castel Gandolfo, with the Holy Father spending a few weeks there for a period of rest and relaxation. And as Vatican News' Linda Bordoni tells us, the locals are hoping the Pope is truly able to make the most of his time there.
Our hope is that the Holy Father will be well here in Castel Gandolfo, said Father Tadeusz Rojmus, that he may rest and accomplish what he himself has said is the purpose of his stay: prayer, rest, reading and sport. Speaking to Vatican Radio, the parish priest of the Pontifical Parish of St. Thomas of Villanova in Castel Gandolfo said the residents there are happy the Pope is spending his time of rest in the locality, and their genuine hope is that he will be able to enjoy a time of relaxation and downtime during his summer stay. The priest also said he was deeply surprised when Pope Leo personally greeted him and the parish community from the balcony of the Apostolic Palace on his first day in Castel Gandolfo. It was a very beautiful gesture by the Holy Father, he said, towards our entire community. We simply want him to feel at home here, he said, and we look forward to praying the Angelus with the Pope and to any opportunities to see him during his stay. Reflecting on last summer, Father Rojmus recalled Pope Leo's first Mass at the parish church and the gift of a liturgical chalice presented to the community. It will remain one of the most important moments of my priestly life, he said. This year also marks the 400th anniversary of the papal summer residence at Castel Gandolfo, a tradition begun by Urban VIII in 1626. Local church leaders, civic authorities and the parish are planning celebrations to commemorate the milestone and highlight the long history of the Pope's summer residence in the town in the Alban Hills. I'm Linda Bordoni.
And we'll be right back on a Wednesday. Stay tuned. You may have seen the beautiful article in WTN News recently. Vatican beginning a 5-year, $5 million restoration of Renaissance frescoes in the Hall of Raphael. That's actually 5 million euros, means it's just over 6 million in terms of American dollars, giving you an idea of the cost. The conservation work marking a pivotal moment in both the history of restoration and the history of Italian Renaissance art. That, according to the head of the Vatican Museums, Dr. Barbara Iatta. On the phone with us this morning is a dear friend of mine, an amazing witness for the faith, especially when it comes to beauty. Dr. Liz Lev is a renowned art historian, international speaker, best-selling author with decades of experience not only teaching in Rome, but leading guides across the city, across the country, specializing in art history and archaeology. Liz, great to have you on the program. First of all, start out by telling us why this is such an important project, not just for the Vatican, but for us in terms of the beauty of our faith.
Well, this is really one of the great works of Renaissance art. It's a private loggia. It connected the Pope's private room, so it's not something that the general public has been able to see very often. But in the history of art, it really was a pivotal moment when Raphael, who was now working, he had been discovered under Pope Julius II, started by working in his apartment. But it was Pope Leo X Medici that really allowed him to blossom, not only as an artist, but as an architect. He was able to design this open loggia, this walkway that would look out towards what is today St. Peter's Square, or out towards the Vatican spaces. And he was able to design this for this exquisite patron. He was able to design this series of arcades that would be recounting the stories of salvation in 13 days, going from Genesis all the way down to the Gospel.
Wow. And so I understand there are a number of experts that are going to be, they actually began the work in April, and they're using a particular style of technique, including laser technology. Is that correct?
Yes. The loggia was once open to air, which of course caused a lot of damage. When you see the decoration of it, some of it has been eroded by the fact that it's 500 years old. I mean, it was executed between 1513 and 1550. So it's been 500 years exposed to the elements, and that's already eroded some of it. Then in the 19th century, in an attempt to try to preserve it, they put glass in, and they glassed in the loggia, but that created this very humid environment, which created even more problems. And this all stems from the fact that this amazing thing, which Raphael put together, he did as a team. It's the opposite of the Sistine Chapel, where we imagine Michelangelo sitting by himself, which he didn't do. But Raphael put together a team, and he brought together students, and he allowed them to excel. And these students managed to figure out how the ancient Romans had been able to produce their stucco decorations 1,500 years earlier. So the humidity has damaged this incredible sort of artistic achievement. And so it's taken a great deal of thought, ingenuity, and innovation for them to find the right technology to be able to act on these stuccos and on these paintings in such a way that we can maintain them, but still be able to restore them back to some shadow of their former glory.
It is amazing to me, as many times as you have led our groups and led me and Deacon Dominic and the Vatican patrons through the various areas of the Vatican, and there's just so much there that we still haven't seen yet because of the detail, because of so many artists that were involved. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, being that Deacon Dom and I are part-time residents of Umbria, Raphael is from the region of La Marche, is he not?
Yes, he came from Urbino. And
right.
He made his way to Rome as a very young man. He actually went from Urbino to Perugia to Florence, and then he ultimately made his way to Rome. And Rome, too, was where he found his great fortune in these two extraordinary papal patrons who put him in a position to deliver the most astonishing work of art. He's 25 years old when he's painting the famous School of Athens, which he has seen many times. And then, he's in his 30s, a Fortune 500 company, and he's now working on this incredible loggia for Leo X Medici, which will go down in history as Raphael's Bible. It's like he created an illuminated manuscript for the Pope to contemplate as he walked back and forth under those vaults.
We are talking with Dr. Elizabeth Lev, renowned art historian, international speaker, and excellent guide in Rome. She's also an art history professor in Rome. So, Liz, this is going to take 5 years. Once it's done, will it be open to the public?
I think when it's done, it will probably become some sort of special extra opening. There are parts of the Vatican that are very small. They really can't handle the normal 30,000 visitors a day traipsing up and down them, especially since many of those visitors wouldn't even care. But there are some special areas of the Vatican museums that can be opened upon special request. And I hope, it is my hope, that the Loggia will end up becoming part of that. That is always a very, very sensitive question, though, because at the moment, the Loggia really aren't part of the museum, because it is part of these connecting walkways that are integral part of where the Pope resides, where the Secretary of State is, where the Holy See is run. So obviously there's going to be a lot of thinking about how to ensure, if you have visitors in a space like that, that the museum visitors stay in the museum and the running of the Holy See and the Secretary of State stay on their side.
And how are they paying for this? It's going to be about 5.5 million euros, around 6.3 million in American dollars. I understand there's some grants and some donations being collected or being given toward this project.
Yes, it's a remarkable gift. It's an enormous gift. It's over $14 million that's been given from the Stephen A. Schwarzman Foundation. And it's really this magnificent idea of helping out the World Monuments Fund, the Vatican Museums. We really spoke about how this is a shared cultural patrimony, and so well worth trying to preserve. And really, it is, and I've seen it on several occasions, and it really was in a state of really serious restoration. I think the other really special thing about this gift is that, yes, the $5.5 million will be going for the actual restoration and the costs of the restoration, but an enormous amount, the lion's share, will actually be going for digital documentation so that people can learn about this. And I think perhaps the most important, it's going to go to training. They are bringing in, I think they have 20 restorers. They are training restorers. This is becoming a teaching space. And what makes that so extraordinary is that's exactly what Raphael did 500 years ago when he embarked on this project to make this unbelievably beautiful thing, the most beautiful walkway in all of Christendom, in which he was going to bring together his Christian knowledge and storytelling, but at the same time, his knowledge of antiquity and the beauty that ancient Rome had managed to produce. Now, the Vatican Museum is going to bring in young people the same way Raphael did and allow them to learn what they excel at, whether it's restoring fresco or whether it's restoring stucco or whether it's restoring tiles. And so one of the more beautiful things about this gift is that it's sustaining in the sense of really bringing forth another generation of people who will have the know-how to continue to preserve these works in posterity.
That is amazing. It's like Ecclesiastes, everything old is new again, right? Nothing new under the sun in terms of continuing this beautiful tradition of training. Liz, thank you so much. I knew you'd be the best person in the whole wide world to talk to about this. I may be somewhat biased, but you're such a wealth of information. Dr. Liz Love, of course, she is a renowned art historian with over 25 years in Rome. She's an international speaker. Go to her website, lizlovetours.com, and check out her TED Talk on the Sistine Chapel. Phenomenal. And again, we've been discussing this amazing project announced by the Vatican Museums recently, a 5-year, €5 million restoration of Renaissance frescoes in the Hall of Raphael. We'll be right back. Okay, so we were in Rome, and as you can tell by the music, it's time for Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, based on my EWTN books. Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Volume 1 came out last year. Volume 2 is now out, all about St. Francis. And I thought it would be great to kind of dive into the area south of Rome known as Castel Gandolfo. And this is where the summer papal residence is. And most people think of it and they think of the summer residence, but they don't realize the history there. the history and also the beauty of this location. It is a great place to get away if you're in Rome, especially right now because it's very, very warm in Rome, and it's cooler in the area of Castel Gandolfo because it sits on top of a hill overlooking Lake Albano. It's in an area known as the Alban Hills, and someone who knows all about the history of the amazing Castel Gandolfo was our very own Dr. Matthew Bunson. Matthew, thanks for joining us. I'm so excited, first of all, to have you join us. I know you were listening to our mutual friend, Dr. Liz Lev, talking about the restoration at the Raphael Loggia. But this is such a unique place, Castel Gandolfo, which is why we're including it in our upcoming pilgrimage in October. So what's the historical significance of Castel Gandolfo?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a truly ancient place, and you go back all the way to the Romans and even before them. So that there's that, of course. You have the remains of the palace of Emperor Domitian and all of that. But we think of it for two reasons. One, as you noted, just the sheer beauty of Lake Albano, which is also called Lake Castel Gandolfo. As you say, it's not too far out of Rome, but it seems like an entirely different world when you're out that way. In the Alban Hills. Yeah. The climate is pretty temperate. The summers are ideal, and which is one of the reasons why it first attracted some of the popes to come out there. Because, as you know, the summers in Rome could be pretty brutal, including outbreaks historically of things like malaria and other problems. So they wanted to find sort of a place they could go for refuge. To get away from the heat, and so they ended up taking the whole papal court. That's where things kind of took an interesting turn, because in 1626, Urban VIII, who is best known for completing so much of the work on the massive Basilica of St. Peter's, made it his official papal residence. So here we are exactly 400 years removed from that momentous decision, and the popes have been there ever since, with the one notable exception, of course, of Pope Francis.
Now, have you been back since Pope Leo has been visiting on a regular basis Castel Gandolfo? Because I haven't been back there, and I can imagine, I've been to Castel Gandolfo many times, but I can imagine it must be so much more lively than it was just a few years ago.
It is. I'm actually planning on trying to get out there next time I'm there. I have not been back since Pope Leo, but you can imagine just the sheer excitement. We have a report coming up for EWTN News on the excitement of the inhabitants of Castello, as they call it, Castel Gandolfo, the inhabitants, first because they are very welcoming to the tourists. It was a museum, the Apostolic Palace, there for about 12 years as a gesture on the part of Pope Francis, because he, as you know, he chose never to go out there. But also, there's something very special about the relationship between Castel Gandolfo and the popes. And for a few weeks every summer, they have the Pope as a resident. And it becomes a real hub of activity, not just tourism, but of pilgrims making their way there. And that there's just the kind of intimacy between the people of Castel Gandolfo and the popes. And that's been true, certainly, in all the time that the popes have been going there.
We are talking with our very own Dr. Matthew Bunson, American historian, author, professor, and Roman Catholic theologian, serving, of course, as our vice president and editorial director of EWTN News. Of course, his most recent book, all about Pope Leo. I love Castel Gandolfo. It's just one of those special places. If you don't have time, let's say, to go up to Umbria, to Orvieto, or to Assisi, you can get away. It's only about 30 minutes. You can take the train. You can drive there. It's not bad at all. It's just such a pretty place. And I wish more people would, when they're visiting Rome, go to locations like this, not just because of the beauty and the relaxation, but especially because of the history. You can even tour this, even though the Pope is now there. They still have a section open, including the Vatican Gardens, to the public. And if you can do a tour to see the different items they have in there belonging to the other popes, such as Benedict and JP2 and previous popes as well, it really gives you a history of the papacy in one location.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact that the popes found as such a respite, a place where they can rest, but also to work. Pope St. John Paul II really had a great fondness for Castel Gandolfo, as did Benedict XVI. It's one of the reasons why, right after his resignation, we had those absolutely unforgettable images when he arrived at Castel Gandolfo on the day of his formal resignation. It was February 28th. I can remember it burned into my memory. When he arrived by helicopter, was taken into Castel Gandolfo, and then you had the closing of those gates of the Apostolic Palace in Castel Gandolfo, that sense of finality to his pontificate, and the fact that he chose to spend his time there during that the Sede Vacante said a lot about how much he really was fond of Castel Gandolfo. And now we have Pope Leo, who made that decision without any great fanfare. You and I have always joked about the fact that Pope Leo does the things that popes do, and one of them is to go out to Castel Gandolfo. So he started doing it last summer, but it's slightly complicated because the Apostolic Palace, as we were just saying, had been converted into a museum to be open for the public, and as a gesture on the part of Pope Francis to try to bring some tourists in. But that meant that Pope Leo was spending his time in what's called the Villa Barberini, which is right next to it, which at one point was sort of taken over by the popes, while the Apostolic Palace itself in Castel Gandolfo was being renovated and made sort of habitable for a pope. And so now he will be spending his time there. But as you say, there's still so many things to do even when the Pope is there, that you can see. And one of those great highlights for me is always the Vatican Observatory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they even have a school there now, too, a special higher education place where they learn different techniques about science and math. It's really quite exciting. So, Matthew, I'm really excited that this is on our itinerary for our Tease Italy, Living the Dolce Fede in the Footsteps of the Popes. This is a very special place, and Dr. Bunson and I and Deacon Dom and Dr. Bunson's beautiful bride, Bonnie, who's just adorable. Love her to pieces. The four of us will be leading along with Father Petrie. We're going to have a blast. You can still join us. It's just about filled, but we do have a few seats left, October 8th through the 16th, and that's coming up. And all you need to do is either call corporate travel, or you can just go to my website at teresatomio.com to the event section. The brochure is there. Matthew, thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to get back to Castel Gandolfo.
Well, this is a return to history. It's a place where a lot of pilgrims don't go. It's a place where a lot of tourists don't go because, as you say, it seems to be almost unreachable, and yet, as you noted, it's about half an hour away. And there's no way that you could do a pilgrimage like this in the footsteps of the popes without going to Castel Gandolfo as a celebration, but also as a way of deepening our knowledge of the lives of the popes. And at Castel Gandolfo, you have a bit of the human side of the popes, too. Because we know, for example, that Pope Leo is going to be getting some rest. He's likely to be doing some exercise. We know he likes to play tennis. He may be riding his horse, perhaps. Proton, his horse? A gift.
Yep.
His horse.
Matthew, we got to go, but I'm so excited to have you explain Castel Gandolfo, and just a great time we're going to have, God willing, October 8th through the 16th. Check it out, in the footsteps of the popes, our October pilgrimage. We'll be right back. Well, normally we would find our Joni in Rome for our Joan's Rome segment. We still have Joan's Rome with Joan Lewis, but we find her in, of all places, Tennessee. Hello, my dear. How are things?
Oh, things are very, very beautiful. I'm with a very large family, the Walsh family, and 12 of their children in a beautiful home in Knoxville, Tennessee. We've met first, of all places, Teresa, at La Vittoria in Rome quite a number of years ago. And I know. And the family comes back to Rome every year. And they were there about a month ago. And I remember we were talking about July 4th. And I said, I haven't been there in 19 years for July 4th. So Barry said, well, if you want to come to the States, come and stay with us. Well, I practically made it happen overnight. So all the celebrations, fireworks. I mean, just fireworks galore in this whole neighborhood. There's a man on July 3rd. I don't know when he began this, but on July, well, I guess the first year his grandson was born, he had a very wealthy man. He had a huge firework display, like 20 minutes, on a lake, just which you can see from their home. And he does it every year on July 3rd. So 15, 20 minutes of incredible fireworks and the neighbors and stuff like that. So it was the entire holiday spirit, and it was interesting to be here and see our first American Pope, in his various messages to Americans, and because he also had one about the Eucharistic Congress, and his wonderful words, and then a little bit of history, or a big bit. The Holy Father went to the home of Brian Birch, the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See, went to the residence for dinner and a visit with the family, and the Birches have 9 children, so I've had dinner many, many times in the dining room where they ate, and it's a beautiful house. So for popes to go out and like that, I believe it is the first time ever in Rome that a pope has been in a private home. John Paul had a lot of Polish friends, and he might go to homes where he'd have afternoon tea or something like that, but not an evening and not a dinner. But
I'm thinking that since you've been there, they must have a staff. I would be a nervous wreck to have to cook for the Pope. I mean, come on. I'd be so nervous. They have to have a staff or something, right? I mean,
absolutely. They have a staff, and you're going to have a cook. I mean, all year round for the film. Not all 9 of the Birch kids live in Rome, but I think it's 4 or 5. And the residence, it's a beautiful home, but it only has 3 bedrooms. So there's the master suite for ambassador and spouse, and then I'm not sure exactly how the arrangements are for the kids that are staying there. But in any event, they have private schooling and all. So things are good for the family, whatever family is, comes to the position of the Holy See. So anyway, exciting.
Oops, are you there, Joan? Did we lose you? Oh, there you are. We lost you for a second. Go ahead. Oh. Yeah, you cut out for a second. It's been a busy time, even though I know the Holy Father is relaxing now, a little bit anyway, in Castel Gandolfo. We were just talking about that with Dr. Bunson. But already he has a luncheon planned this weekend. And he's already been, of course, I know he is going to be taking some downtime, but he's still keeping pretty busy. We both love, and Matthew does as well, Castel Gandolfo. That is such a beautiful, peaceful place and so close to Rome.
Well, what absolutely thrilled me beyond words was hearing that the Pope was finally going to be in the Apostolic Palace in the town of Castel Gandolfo, the one that overlooks the main square, Liberty Square. I mean, picture our White House being vacant for 12 years because Pope Francis did not ever love or even like, to go to Castel Gandolfo. So the palace was unused. The town was dying because of, restaurants, people just weren't going. Because when people knew that the Pope lived there, even if it was March and he wasn't going to be in town or something, they still went. This was the papal residence. And then the residence was turned into a museum by Pope Francis. But my understanding is that work is being done. I don't know where the things that are in the museum would go, but work is being done to transform it back into a private residence. And my first visit many years ago when I was working for the Vatican, I wanted to do an article for the Vatican Information Service, where I worked, on Castel Gandolfo. And Cardinal Sciocca from Detroit, who headed Vatican City at the time, he arranged for me to have a car and go out and, spend the day with Saverio Petrillo, who managed the papal estate. And I got to see rooms that nobody ever, until it was a museum, that nobody ever got to see. And inside and, that particular palace. And then I was brought to all the gardens and to the small homes where, like, the Secretary of State stays when he would go to Castel Gandolfo. So just to have this residence, which I found out from a private source, that last year when Pope Leo went to Villa Barberini, where he's been going on Monday nights and all, where he really wanted to stay but knew he couldn't, was the Apostolic Palace. So here we are. He's going to be there for 3 weeks, and as you said, he's got this. He tries to keep things to a minimum, but I know this dinner for 200 poor people on Saturday is going to be a very important moment. But Teresa's just so beautiful, and what I love about him being in the Apostolic Palace is that it overlooks Lake Albano, which is this very peaceful lake, an extinct volcano, and the views from
it's gorgeous.
From his chapel, from the bedroom windows, are just absolutely gorgeous, and the townspeople, of course, he was so cute when he got out on that main balcony, and the day he arrived, Poplio, and addressed the people, and they were shouting up questions, how are you going to spend your time? And he said, well, there'll be some resting and reading, a little bit of working, and he said, who knows, there might even be some sports. Because I heard Matthew, talk about the pool that was put in many years ago because John Paul loved, physical activity, and he, except for skiing, he felt he wasn't getting enough, and so we had the pool built at Castel Gandolfo. And he said, if you keep a pope in shape, installing a swimming pool is cheaper than having a conclave. So,
That's a great line.
I just always loved that line. And John Paul loved it, Benedict loved it, and maybe our listeners remember, because I know you and I do, the final words from Benedict as Pope, February 28th, 2013, and he was out on the balcony overlooking the town square. It was dark, of course. It was February, so it was, dark at that hour, and we heard his last words, and it was an extraordinarily emotional moment. I mean, for the townspeople, for us watching on TV and everything else, but I just wish it was a little bit easier to reach Castel Gandolfo if you don't have a car, because the thing is, there are trains from Rome, little local trains, but they bring you to the part of Castel Gandolfo that's on the lake, and then you have to get another bus or a taxi up to the residence,
Yeah,
but
that's what I always try to tell people when I consult with them for Tees Italy. They say, well, we're just going to take the train and to wherever. And I say, okay, but how are you going to, you get to point A, how are you going to get to point B? Just because you get to the train station in a particular location, for example, Assisi, right, is similar. The train drops you off down in Santa Maria de Angeli, and you still have to take either the bus or a cab to get up to Assisi. So people think, oh, I'm just going to take the train. It's a little bit different, so you have to plan ahead. But it's worth it. It's a very unique place, Castel Gandolfo.
Oh, so peaceful and relaxing. Now, the couple I'm with, Barry and Margaret Walsh, a couple of years, I think it was 2 years ago, when they were in Italy just on their own for the first time without any of the children, they rented a car, and the driver, driver that I knew. And so, he brought us out there, and then we did whatever we wanted to do, walked up and down the streets and had porchetta, ate in the restaurant. And then I think we just spent an hour in the square. And I was trying to tell them all about the palace and the history, and you're just so totally relaxed. It's like just to stand up and get out of your chair was a chore, but beautiful and peaceful. We all need that kind of serenity, Teresa, at some point in our lives. I don't care if it's you go to a big park near your home or something. We just need to get away from noise and chaos and honking horns and etc. We just need that, and I'm so happy that Leo has it, and a pool and play tennis, and he's going to ride his horse for sure. I do know he rides it from a friend in the Swiss Guard, but we haven't seen any pictures yet. That'll be a historic day when we see Pope Leo on Proton. So that was the name of the horse.
Well, it's interesting because the priest from the local church, Linda Bordoni, I ran her report in the news. She was talking about how thrilled the local pastor is, and that Leo made an effort already to meet him, and he was just so excited and so thrilled. He gave him a gift, and it's just so personal for the people there,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's your parish priest in a way when he stays there, and because he's so down to earth, so sincere, and I wish him well. And I've had a smile on my face ever since I knew he was going back to the palace, and then I hope that it becomes that they are able to transform it back into a residence, and that's where he'll go whenever. And John Paul would go there, like after a long trip. If he was traveling around the world, gone 10, 12 days, he'd go back to Castel Gandolfo for a 2 or 3 day break. So you're always, you've got your secretaries, you've got communications around the world, wherever you are as a world leader, but still.
Well, especially nowadays. I remember I was doing some research on Marconi, and Marconi was the first. He put some sort of a car phone in one of the Pope's cars, and so when he was in Castel Gandolfo, he can communicate with the Vatican. I mean, it's a very primitive thing, but I learned that when I was up in Marconi's home in Bologna last year, which is a really cool thing. Well, my dear, we're wishing you safe travels. Have about a minute left back to Roma. When do you go back to Rome?
I leave on Saturday, arrive on Sunday, so got to work on my weekend radio show and Vatican Insider and get that put together. I'll be doing a special on Castel Gandolfo, of all things.
Well, there you go. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, safe travels. We're not quite going to be passing each other in the air. Deacon Dom and I are heading back, as I mentioned to you, on July 20th. So, God willing, we will. Well, next week we'll still be here in Umbria, but looking forward to
we'll get together in the homeland.
Absolutely. All right, my dear. God bless you. Thank you so much. Our very own Joan Lewis, of course, giving us an update on Castel Gandolfo. She has a great knowledge of that area, has been there many times. And again, it's such a pretty place to visit. And even if you get to Castel Gandolfo and the Pope isn't there, you can still do the tours. It's the place of the world's first mailbox. Did you know that? Yeah, it was established there in 1820, believe it or not. A very beautiful place above Lake Albano, and also another great town in that area is Frascati. We'll be right back. Hope your Wednesday, July 8th, is going beautifully. Thank you for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection on a Wednesday morning. Coming up in hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra, we are going to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman. They're going to be on EWTN Live tonight with Father Mitch Pacwa, talking about reclaiming sexual health. They'll share their own journey and how their own experiences are being used to help others. So this is going to be a powerful and important discussion. And I think this is something that not only married couples should hear, but engaged couples, young people, those who are in relationships. We need to hear what the culture has done to us. And even if we do get caught up, unfortunately, in the culture, we always know that God allows U-turns as long as we have a contrite heart and are willing, of course, to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. But more than that, there's a healing that can come, and there's good that can come from it, although you don't have to go down that road. That's the other important message. God is always going to forgive you. He is merciful, right? His mercy is endless and very, very powerful. And again, if we have a contrite heart and receive the sacrament, but there is a better way, and that's to stay on the straight and narrow and follow the Lord in the beautiful teachings of the church. So we'll discuss with Bruce and Jeannie, and they'll give us some highlights as to what they will be discussing this evening on EWTN Live. In the 2 cent segment, I'm so impressed by our saints in terms of the way they would seek out locations for prayer. And I had a phenomenal experience last week when we went to the town of Rocco Parena, connected to the great Saint Rita of Cascia. We'll explain. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Appreciate your listenership here for hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra. Much to discuss this morning, as always, and we're glad you're along with us. We have a great hour planned for you. First up in our 2 cents segment, as I mentioned, leading up to this hour, if you were tuning in, I really am amazed by our saints and the effort so many of them went to, which is a big reason why they became saints, in terms of their prayer life, to make sure that they had a location where they could truly be alone with God and spend their quiet time, their prayer time, their reflective time. And one particular place, a new one for me and Deacon Dom, has to be one of the most special. It is directly connected to St. Rita of Cascia, but it's not in Cascia. It's near Cascia in Umbria, in Italy, and we will explain. All right, we also are going to talk about, if we have time, something else incredible. Not too far from Cascia, about an hour south of Cascia, is a place called Castelluccio di Norcia. It's about 20 miles south of Norcia. And it's a kaleidoscope of colors in the middle of the Sibillini Mountains. And every year, end of June, early July, it literally explodes in color. I don't think I've posted anything on Facebook yet. I've been doing... Dominic and I try to do all these little trips on the weekends, and when we have, time off, like Friday, we had the day off for the holiday. I've always wanted to see this location because the pictures don't even look real, and when you're there, it doesn't look real. It looks like you stepped into a giant painting, an impressionist painting with all different colors. It's just incredible. I'll explain it coming up. And then we're going to be talking with Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman. They'll be in studio with us for 2 segments, because they are here on the EW, or actually say there in Irondale, Alabama, back at the ranch and our main headquarters, for a beautiful interview tonight with our very own Father Mitch Pacwa on his wonderful show, Father Mitch Live, on Wednesday. So they'll give us an idea of what they'll be discussing, a tease, as we say in the biz, but they've got an incredible story of healing, and their ministry is all about sexual health, and more specifically, reclaim sexual health. So it should be quite the important discussion. I think it's an interview you may want to share. Maybe you're in marriage prep. Maybe you've got someone in your family who is getting married. Maybe you've got young people in your family who are just starting to date. It's all important information. So that's a lineup for hour number 2 here on July 8th. It's a Wednesday. We appreciate your listenership. All right, let's take a quick look at the weather for you. Thunderstorms with severe wind gusts and hail will be possible today across parts of the Central Plains and from the Missouri Valley into the upper Mississippi Valley. Heavy rain associated with the thunderstorms may also produce flash and urban flooding, and critical fire weather conditions are still a big concern expected in the Great Basin and the interior Northwest, and we still have dangerous heat continuing across the Southwest and the Southeast. That's the weather and the lineup for the show this morning. Again, we appreciate you listening here on EWTN Radio Extra. Let's get started at 3 minutes past the hour on a Wednesday. Well, President Trump from Turkey saying the fragile ceasefire with Iran, in his opinion, it's over.
As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars.
The U.S. Treasury Department also moving yesterday to reimpose sanctions on the sale of Iranian oil, immediately sending the price of crude up. And Mark Mayfield tells us the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says the recent round of U.S. strikes on Iran were absolutely necessary.
The U.S. hit dozens of targets in Iran overnight after Iran attacked commercial oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking from Turkey, where a NATO summit is underway, Rutte said that Iran had violated the ceasefire agreement with the U.S. and that a U.S. response was crucial. Iran is accusing the U.S. of violating a memorandum of understanding signed last month and said it has responded with attacks on U.S. targets in Bahrain and Kuwait. I'm Mark Mayfield.
President Trump, meanwhile, again, also calling for U.S. control of Greenland, threatening to pull all U.S. forces out of Europe because of the continent's opposition to that idea.
We need it for protection of the world, not just the United States. And it's very important. It doesn't help Denmark, but it helps us. And it's very important for us.
Speaking at the NATO summit in Turkey, the president said Denmark does not spend any money to help the semi-autonomous territory of Greenland, which he claimed is surrounded by Chinese and Russian ships. Europe's position is that the future of Greenland is up to the people of Greenland and Denmark. The president saying he could remove U.S. forces from Europe, arguing the continent has changed over the last 20 years because of immigration. He accused NATO of never being there for the U.S., even though the only time the alliance's mutual defense pact was activated was after the 9/11 attacks. And France's National Assembly approving an assisted suicide bill, a euthanasia bill that would allow adults suffering from advanced or terminal illnesses to medically end their lives. The text will now continue its parliamentary process before the final vote takes place next week. The approval marking a milestone in French legislation by introducing, for the first time, the possibility that the state authorizes a deliberate administration of death in response to situations of medical conditions, a decision that represents a profound change in the conception of the role of medicine, traditionally oriented toward curing, relieving, and accompanying the patient, never toward intentionally causing their death. A police agent saying the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk in Utah had interacted with members of Turning Point USA just hours before Kirk was killed. During a week-long evidentiary hearing, David Hull described how someone believed to be Tyler Robinson was seen on surveillance video.
He heads out of the parking garage on foot into the campus and actually goes to the quad area of the campus. At that time, he makes contact with some representatives from TPUSA.
Hull did not elaborate on what was actually said between Robinson and members of Kirk's Turning Point organization. The judge is set to decide if there is enough evidence against Robinson to proceed to trial for killing Kirk at Utah Valley University last fall. That hearing marking the first time the conservative activist widow Erica Kirk and his parents have been in the same room with the man accused of killing him. Andrew Whitman tells us much of Midtown Manhattan's east side is now returning to normal somewhat after evacuation orders were eased near the unstable high-rise that was in question.
For much of Tuesday, a chunk of Midtown East was closed to vehicles and pedestrians from 40th to 45th Streets between 1st and 3rd Avenues. Around 10 p.m. Tuesday night, officials lifted those restrictions, though 5 buildings will remain empty. Vehicular traffic is restricted on 42nd and 43rd Streets. If you live or work there, you will be allowed access. Crews inside are continuing work to try and stabilize the building. In New York, I'm Andrew Whitman.
2 Supreme Court justices will be testifying on Capitol Hill next week about their annual budget request to Congress. Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett appearing on July 14th before the House Appropriations Subcommittee that handles Supreme Court spending. It will be the first time since 2019 that Supreme Court justices have testified on their annual budget request. The High Court is requesting a boost of more than $14 million for the next fiscal year to increase security for the 9 justices. And Matt Madison tells us the Supreme Court is declining to block Texas's App Store Accountability Act.
The measure requires imposing age verification and parental consent requirements on app stores as well as developers. Students, along with the Computer and Communications Industry Association, sued to stop the Texas law, arguing it violates the Constitution's First Amendment on free speech. Justices denied requests by the challengers on Monday to lift a lower court's decision that allowed the law to take effect while litigation continues. The measure reflects broader efforts by some states to regulate smartphone use by children and curb the potentially harmful effects of social media. I'm Matt Mattinson.
And as we discussed earlier in the previous hour with Joan Lewis, the Holy Father will have lunch with around 200 poor people within the Pontifical Gardens of Castel Gandolfo. This will happen again on Saturday. The initiative, called Lunch with the Pope, will begin with the celebration of the liturgy, and the care for creation will be the dedication, followed by a moment of welcome and refreshments, a guided visit, and a shared meal with the Holy Father. The gathering builds on an initiative first launched back in August of last year when the Holy Father shared lunch with poor people from the Diocese of Albano. That encounter has since become an annual event promoted by the Laudato Si Center for Higher Education, which oversees the development of the Borgo Laudato Si project. Each year, a different diocese will be invited to bring together poor people, refugees, migrants, and others experiencing difficult times, offering them a day of rest, immersed in beauty of creation, and an opportunity to meet the Pope. Meanwhile, there's new attention on the lakeside village of Castel Gandolfo, with the Pope spending a few weeks in the community for a period of rest and relaxation. As Linda Bordoni with Vatican News tells us, the locals are hoping he is truly able to make the most of his time there.
Our hope is that the Holy Father will be well here in Castel Gandolfo, said Father Tadeusz Rojmus, that he may rest and accomplish what he himself has said is the purpose of his stay: prayer, rest, reading and sport. Speaking to Vatican Radio, the parish priest of the Pontifical Parish of St. Thomas of Villanova in Castel Gandolfo said the residents there are happy the Pope is spending his time of rest in the locality, and their genuine hope is that he will be able to enjoy a time of relaxation and downtime during his summer stay. The priest also said he was deeply surprised when Pope Leo personally greeted him and the parish community from the balcony of the Apostolic Palace on his first day in Castel Gandolfo. It was a very beautiful gesture by the Holy Father, he said, towards our entire community. We simply want him to feel at home here, he said, and we look forward to praying the Angelus with the Pope and to any opportunities to see him during his stay. Reflecting on last summer, Father Rojmus recalled Pope Leo's first Mass at the parish church and the gift of a liturgical chalice presented to the community. It will remain one of the most important moments of my priestly life, he said. This year also marks the 400th anniversary of the papal summer residence at Castel Gandolfo, a tradition begun by Pope Urban VIII in 1626. Local church leaders, civic authorities and the parish are planning celebrations to commemorate the milestone and highlight the long history of the Pope's summer residence in the town in the Alban Hills. I'm Linda Bodoni.
The largest wildfire currently burning in America, now over 100,000 acres. Crews are battling what they call the Babylon fire as the weather in southeast Utah continues to be dry and very hot. Jeff Sanaki, an operations section chief for the U.S. Forest Service, says a wildland firefighting hotshot crew arrived yesterday to help battle that huge blaze.
So they're getting a lay of the land, getting inserted, getting comfortable, getting their situational awareness up.
So far, the fire has destroyed some 5 structures. It was only around 11% contained, and this is as of late yesterday. And President Trump is praising Toyota for moving production of their Tacoma pickup from Mexico to an expanded facility in San Antonio. State Senator Roland Gutierrez says this positions South Texas as a leader for domestic manufacturing.
And we've got to continue that positive energy and trying to make these types of things happen into the future.
And the car maker's billion-dollar plan to shift production away from their Tijuana facility comes as the U.S. and Mexico start talks on a new trade deal very soon. The current United States and Mexico-Canada agreement has expired, triggering yearly reviews. And Tammy Trujillo tells us Republican candidate for California Governor Steve Hilton is siding with Democrats who want to keep landline phone service in the state of California.
Hilton is urging the federal government not to let AT&T end landline service for thousands of homes and businesses. The FCC recently moved toward letting the company cease landline service. Hilton says ending service could hurt rural residents who rely on landlines for emergencies and says the state should decide if landlines are still needed. AT&T says it will only end service where strong wireless coverage exists and promises no one will lose phone or 911 service. Landlines won't be phased out until at least June of 2027. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
And we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hope we're having a beautiful Wednesday morning. It is July 8th, 2026. This is our 2 Cents segment. I give you some thoughts on what's on my mind on any given topic or day. And wanted to share with you a little insight about some of our saints. And I mean, they're just incredible, aren't they? We have over 10,000 saints in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic faith. And if you ever want to be encouraged, you're having a hard time, in prayer or whatever, you really need to just pick a saint. Just pick and look at a saint. They will just give you so much encouragement, especially when you look at a saint such as the amazing Saint Rita of Cascia. So Saint Rita of Cascia is known as a saint of the impossible for many reasons. If you don't know her history, she was born into a family that was struggling with a lot of different things. And in her area of Italy at the time, and this would happen in many areas of Italy, not just in her town in Eastern Umbria, but there were all kinds of family feuds going on, horrible family feuds. And she was the one who had the courage to really work on saving the souls of so many people who were caught up in the midst of these. I'll get into a little bit more detail in just a minute. But in particular, in her case, her parents married her off to a man with whom she was not in love. He was a very difficult man. He was abusive. And somehow she managed to keep her sanity and keep her relationship with God alive. And when you go to her hometown and birthplace, which is Rocco Perena, you understand how she was so strong because of where she often went to pray. So, first of all, she's buried in Kasha. And Kasha, again, is a mountainous town. I mean, literally, you have to take, when you take a tour there, we take a group, we have to account for about a half hour just to get up to the cathedral where her tomb is, where the Augustinian convent was, where she served. It is an incredible journey up the mountain. Now, you don't have to walk. I mean, you can, but you don't want to do that. It's very difficult unless you want to spend a couple hours hiking up the side of the mountain. But you take literally 1, 2, 3 escalators, and then you have to take a large elevator to make it to the rest of the part, to get to the actual town of Kasha. Now, that's where she served as a sister, religious sister in the Augustinians. That's where she is buried. There's also a Eucharistic miracle there below the Cathedral of Kasha. She was born in Rocco Perena, and it's a separate pilgrimage site, and it's about 7 kilometers, so about 5 miles from Kasha. So very close, but it's one of those places like Castle Gandolfo that many tourists or pilgrims don't visit. And this was the first time that Deacon Dom and I have been there. And since we were off last Friday on July 3rd, we thought, well, let's take a ride and let's go to the countryside and let's go to the other side of Umbria, which is about 90 minutes from us, 2 hours from us. And let's go see the birthplace of St. Rita. And it was just beautiful. It's a very small town. There are lovely little shops, religious goods stores. There's a few restaurants. But most importantly, you can go to the birthplace of this great saint. You can go to the hospital, what's left of the hospital where she served. And you can also go to the spot where the miracle of the roses occurred. Now, I don't know if you're aware of the miracle of the roses, but when she was dying, it was in January, and she asked her cousin to go back to her sweet hometown of Rocco Perena and get her a rose and a fig from the fig tree in the garden she loved so much. And her cousin said, well, it's January, but I'll go and give it a shot. And this is why St. Rita is associated with roses. Every time you see her image, in addition to seeing the thorn, which is part of the wounds of Christ that she received, you'll always see her with the red roses. And lo and behold, when her cousin got to Rocco Perena and went to the spot of the garden, there's a beautiful statue of her cousin reaching out to her and giving her a rose in the actual garden spot. She found the roses and she found the figs. And that's how the miracle comes about, associated with St. Rita and the rose. Now, not too far, I haven't posted any of this on Facebook yet. There's so many other places we've been I want to post, but I'm telling you this because of the life of prayer of this amazing saint. Not too far from the garden and her birthplace, her home, is this mountain. I would say it's probably a very, very large hill in the Sibillini Mountains, but it's 300 steps up. And she would walk there, up the side of this mountain, and pray at this very large rock. And on that site now is a small, beautiful church with glass windows, and you can see for miles around eastern Umbria. Kasha is not too far from Norcia, so it's a very pretty area of Umbria. The whole region is gorgeous, but this in particular has a lot of mountainous sections that are just so picturesque. And so she went there to be by herself, and it's said that she was often visited by angels in this location. And we didn't go up there that day because it was about 102 degrees and it was just too hot. But it's just beautiful. You can go online and see pictures. And from what I understand, the steps are very smooth. It's not that difficult, and they're mostly in the shade. But again, you have to be prepared for it because it's not an easy hike, 300 steps. It can take some time. It takes about 20 minutes or so if you go at a decent pace. But it reminds me of these saints who did so much to make sure that they had their private time with the Lord. And that was a very, very special place to them. And the effort it would take for some of these saints to get to these spots of prayer, it's really just so impressive to me. But you can see when you look at the life of St. Rita of Kasha, why she made such an effort to get to this place of isolation and this place of beautiful reflection where she could be so close to God. She married into a very difficult situation with her husband. She gave birth to 2 sons. Her husband, because he was always fighting and all these different fights going on, as we mentioned, it was a very, very difficult time for her family in that area of Italy. He ends up getting murdered, her husband. And her 2 sons, who are young men at the time when this happens, they are so angry and in so much pain that they were vowing to revenge the murder of their father. So they were going to go out and murder the murderer. And she prayed to God and said, please, I would rather my sons die than go to hell. And so before they had time to go after the man who killed their father, they did die tragic deaths. Now talk about pain and talk about suffering and talk about domestic issues. And this is why she is the saint of the impossible. People pray to her for healings in their marriage. And she is just someone who was so strong, but where did she get that strength? From her prayer life and from praying in a place like Rocco Perena. Here are some quotes from St. Rita of Kasha. Love God above all things. His goodness being infinite and his beauty without comparison, you should always keep before your minds the great love he has for you as father, spouse, and master. In our lives, we face troubles, difficulties, and situations that seem impossible. In these moments, our faith in God must be stronger than ever. The greatest glory we can give to God, she said, is to do his will in everything. Nothing, she said, is far from God. She said difficulties and sufferings will disappear if we offer them to God. She also said suffering is a great grace. Through suffering, the soul becomes like the Savior. In suffering, love becomes crystallized. The greater the suffering, the purer the love. And so she, like many of the other saints in the Catholic Church, knew a lot about suffering. And she made an effort regularly to go up to that mountain and pray on that rock. It's quite a large rock. There's some great pictures of it online. If you just Google Rocco Perena, you'll get an idea of what we're talking about in terms of the location of this. Very, very high up on the hills and just a place of prayer for this amazing saint. It's spelled, if you do want to look it up, Roccaporena, Rocco Perena, the birthplace of St. Rita, and a pilgrimage site associated with this great saint of ours. It really is just incredible, and I get such a feeling of respect and admiration for these saints who always, always, always made such an effort to go the extra mile, especially in the case of St. Rita, to make sure they have their prayer time with God. And we see that, of course, in the life of so many saints. You know, St. Anthony, the hermit or the abbot, and we also know this from St. Francis. And if you look at, for example, Laverna, where he received the stigmata, in the middle of nowhere, way, 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 way high up on a mountain in Tuscany. And so many other saints seeking a place of silence. Not necessarily a place of comfort, but a place where they felt close to God. St. Rita of Kasha, pray for us. We'll be right back. "28 minutes past the hour." Welcome back, Catholic Connection. It is a Wednesday morning, hour number 2, EWTN Radio Extra. In studio with us this morning, Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman. And we're going to talk about their beautiful ministry, Reclaim Sexual Health. Their main website, they have others as well, reclaimsexualhealth.com. They will be on live with Father Mitch this evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Irondale. Appreciate you being with us this morning. Jeannie, let me go to you first in terms of how did this all begin? Now you have this ministry. It didn't happen without you and your husband going through a lot of tough times. I know we don't have time to share the whole story. We don't want to give it away because we want people to watch tonight. But just give us a summary of how you decided to turn your misery into a ministry.
Oh, I'll tell you, we're the founders of Elizabeth Ministry International, which in its origin reached out to families during the joys, challenges, and sorrows of childbearing. But when our Bishop David Ricken, came to the Diocese of Green Bay, he met with me and he asked me if I would expand our ministry into what he called the bookends, sexuality and relationships. And he said, I'd like you to start with doing something with pornography. So I remember taking a deep swallow because nobody knew our secret story, that this was our struggle from the beginning of our marriage. And the Holy Spirit convicted me to tell our bishop, and also of the healing that my husband had recently had through a new spiritual director and an online program that he was the third in the world to take, which was designed by brain scientists from Harvard on the brain science of change. And the rest is history, because under the direction of Bishop David Ricken, we were able to take that secular service and make it into a Catholic program that's now known as Reclaim Sexual Health.
So, Bruce, when this first came about, the fact that the bishop wanted you to get more involved and talk about pornography, how did the two of you feel about this?
Well, of course, because it's such a shame-based scenario in the first place, to have been struggling with that, very nervous, very scared, very wondering, okay, can we really take this to the world? Are we ready for the world, or whether even for our friends and coworkers to see this and know what's going on? So there was a lot of apprehension at the beginning, but we really trusted the Holy Spirit. I really trusted the direction of our bishop. He's an awesome shepherd.
He's an awesome bishop. I know him very well. Yep.
And so by taking that, we decided, okay, leap of faith, we're going to do this. And like Jeannie said, the rest of it was just an awesome progression. Through every person we help, we get closer not only to God, but also closer to those people we're helping and closer to each other. It's done a lot for our marriage as well.
So how does it work, and Jeannie, I'll go back to you, in terms of what you offer couples in terms of reclaiming sexual health?
Well, it's really expanded to a lot of different resources. It started with, and we still have, the online program, Reclaim Sexual Health, where people can anonymously enter into this program and be able to receive the same information that Bruce was able to get that helped him, as well as a Catholic component to that. And so that is a beautiful program, and we've seen great success from people who have been able to really apply themselves. They have to do what they are taught in this program, and they will find that healing. But then we realized marriages were not being saved because the spouse was so wounded from this experience of betrayal. So then we started Navigate Betrayal, and Navigate Betrayal is also an online program, and again, also one that someone can remain anonymous in. And that helps that spouse. Right now, the online version is for wives, and we're working on the online version for husbands as well. But then we moved into offering retreats. And so we do small group retreats, and we also do a private, either individual retreat or couple retreats as well. And that has really expanded and taken off for us as well. And so then our third component, though, was that something we never thought about, actually, and that was the idea of how affected children are, either young children or adult children, when it becomes public that one of their parents has either been engaged in pornography or an affair. And so the need for outreach to that. And Bruce and I are retired, supposedly. We're in our 70s, early 70s. But what we've discovered is most of those people, the relationship we build is one of being either parents or grandparents for them. Because the opposite we found of addiction, or the opposite of a compulsive behavior like this, really isn't, like the goal isn't sobriety. The goal is really connection. That's the opposite. All of those things bring people into isolation. And that connection is so vital and important. And now we're just ready to launch by September 8th, our Blessed Mother's birthday, we'll be launching a new outreach, which is preventative. And this is my very first professional job was working for the federal government as a parent educator for children at risk. And we're recognizing that not just rescuing people who are caught up in these sexual sins, but the need to go back and try to prevent them so that those wounds don't occur that they find self-comfort in through pornography.
Wow. So this is a lot of work to do in terms of ministry and the different avenues that you cover. Bruce, do you have other couples working with you to help carry out some of these retreats and other events in which you're involved?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of backing and a lot of other people who get involved, not only just advising us, but also doing some of the things. Like we have one other retired couple that are ambassadors for us, that they love to travel, and they actually take our message to other dioceses. Whenever they're on the road, they set up meetings with the diocesan staff in whatever cities they happen to be traveling through, and that has done an awful lot to help get the message out to the family life departments and to the clergy. And of course, prior to COVID, we also went to dioceses and did clergy training, because this is such a pervasive situation that we really need to spread it as far as we can. We need to help the clergy to be able to have resources to share.
And another
in terms of the just let me ask you a quick question before you take a break, because I want to get some statistics in here. How bad is it? And I don't know if you, because I'm familiar with this a lot. I do a lot of this in my media talks. But in terms of Catholics who are really struggling with this, is there a breakdown in numbers, or is it more overall? And has it increased in the last few years in terms of the changes we've seen in technology?
It definitely has increased from what we can say, and yes, there's a lot of statistics out there that we can pull from, and one that's often quoted is about 75% of the people who are active practicing Catholics are actually have that, if not in their own life, and someone they love is dealing with this. So that's a pretty high statistic.
Wow.
The one that hits us the most is that the average age of exposure is somewhere around 10 years old. And so that's the real panic, is recognizing that with the increased media exposure of these kinds of things, with kids walking around with cell phones in their pockets or tablets for school or who knows what, is that it's so much more readily available that I think really if we were honest, that statistic is probably a lot lower than 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard even as low as 8 years old.
Yeah. I mean, we've worked with some families where they've got 5-year-olds who we have therapists are saying are classic addicted to this kind of a comfort, or this kind of a self-soothing experience for them. And so a lot of people have made the computer or the phone a babysitter for their young children. And that's why we felt we needed to come out with, we call this Covenant Critters, which we're launching, like I said, on September 8th, and part of Homemade Holiness. And it's based off of Job 12:7 that says, ask the animals to teach children.
Wow, so many questions. What a beautiful ministry, and so many different facets of these important issues. And we will resume our conversation right after the break, talking with Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman. And we're talking about reclaimed sexual health. And they're on with Father Mitch tonight, don't forget. Thanks so much for tuning in to Catholic Connection, hour number 2, EWTN Radio Extra. You do not want to miss, you shouldn't miss it any week at all, because of Father Mitch, and he's such a great host, and the guests are fabulous. But tonight, with our guest, Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman, will be joining Father Mitch for EWTN Live, of course, every Wednesday evening. And their overall ministry reclaims sexual health, but they're doing so many other activities and ministries within reclaimed sexual health that all pertain to what we're seeing in our culture. And we were chatting during the break about AI. And Bruce, I'll let you go first, but you can both jump in on this. I can only imagine this is making this situation with addictions, especially with pornography, even worse. Tell us about that.
Doing is that since the whole pornography thing is based on self-soothing, and since people that are caught up with pornography self-soothe, by using that, now the ability to enhance their what do I want to call it, their sense of
fantasy.
Fantasy, yeah, that's it. Yeah, now they can create their own fantasies along the way. With the AI, they can also create images that are way above and beyond anything that could possibly be matched by real human beings. And so because of that supernatural form, they've just taken this whole concept of self-soothing and fantasy to a gigantic new level, one that's just way beyond any of us ever thought could happen.
And one of the things that I would say is added to the AI complication with this is, let's face it, the term that we use all the time for all of these things is dishonest sexuality. It's all dishonest. And when we look at what AI does, is it's able to add to that a greater feeling of this being personal, because they can, AI can answer back to them and act like a girlfriend, let's say. And so in that process, they're also being totally dishonest about being engaged in a relationship, because the typical print or movie type of pornography, you're still having to create an awful lot of stuff in your own mind. But with AI starts creating components for you, and that becomes much more addictive.
It seems to me as well that this whole situation with AI and whatnot, you have, in addition to artificial intelligence, and you have all these different online apps as well, such as Tinder, these so-called dating apps. You're hearing stories about how so many married people are sneaking around and having this, I don't want to call it an opportunity, but taking advantage of these different things and having double lives, other families, and just carrying on is like it's no big deal.
Right. And again, that's where that phrase that we use, dishonest, is so much a part of this story, no matter what aspect you're talking about. We've lost truth, right? We've lost it in so many different ways, particularly in the sexual realm. And that double life is something that people have almost been conditioned to do, because we're supposed to multitask everything, right? And so with that, we do find that today's dimensions of pornography and of any form of virtual infidelity has expanded so very rapidly. And there's a big difference in the brain science between what maybe in the 50s and 60s with Playboy magazine happened, and today where you're able to have this enhanced online.
So where do you think this is all going in terms of getting better or worse? I mean, technology, you're using the online outlets, platforms so well and for such godly purposes. Where do you see this going? And Bruce, I'll go back to you in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly with technology.
Well, the good, of course, is that we can do so much more with this as far as our helping people and helping ministry. The bad, on the other side, is that more and more young people are getting caught up in this now because, again, with the AI, they're developing these relationships that are totally fantasy. We're having increases in young people that are even committing suicide because their AI partner has either rejected them or talked them into suicide in some cases. You've seen some court cases like that around the country. So, there is definitely a very, very serious peak coming to this. We're just hoping that enough people, through our preventative programs and through other things available, will be able to jump on board and recognize that this is something we need to start early in life, start with our children earlier and earlier ages to prevent this from happening in the first place.
Yeah. I think a lot of people misunderstand that you can move beyond this. You two are an example of that. I think someone gets so hurt and gets so upset, and there's such a lack of trust, and they see, maybe they're looking at this as the rebuilding is so hard, getting over the pain is so hard, I just want to end the relationship and walk away. Do you run into that kind of an approach?
We absolutely do. On the other hand, I offer these retreats for Navigate Betrayal for betrayed wives, and they've taught me so much over the years. And we live in near at the Shrine of Our Lady of Champion, and our bishop has consecrated Bruce and I, along with all of our different ministries, to Our Lady. And so all of our retreats include a pilgrimage there. And at one of the first pilgrimages that we did with betrayed wives, one of the women came out and she said, after time in the crypt, she said that she felt the Blessed Mother was telling her that she was raising an army. And the Blessed Mother was in combat boots, Our Lady of Champion in combat boots. And so our bishop has approved an image that we have of Our Lady of Champion in combat boots leading an army for purity. And this woman said she's beginning with the betrayed wives. And I think to answer your initial question about where do we see this going, I see a lot of people saying enough is enough and wanting to raise their children in a protective environment and wanting to be able to say we're not going any further down this dark space. So
Yeah.
I actually have more hope than I probably even did 5 years ago. Even though it seems more intense right now with AI and other things, I think more and more people, that at least that we're dealing with, have found the healing and the recovery, and they all want to go with what we call from wound to witness. And they really want to go from lust to legacy. They really want to do something. They don't want to sit on the beaches in their retirement either. They want to be out there in Our Lady's Army and fighting for purity.
That would be my next question, because I'm sure when they receive that hope and that healing and that happiness returns, that joy returns, they want to share it with other people. So it's great, Bruce, that you have, because you can't have a testimony unless you've been tested. And if you've been tested, other people are going to relate to that. You're not just talking at them, right?
That's exactly it. And I want to throw in one thing here, because we're talking about the betrayal and the betrayed wives. So many of the people we work with, the husband is not quite ready yet to face this particular issue or what's going on. And so on behalf of myself and behalf of them, the husbands who are still seeking the truth, I want to apologize to all those women that have been betrayed and let them know that there is hope and healing, and that their husband really does, from a different standpoint, love him, but right now his capabilities might not be there yet. But we sure can help them get there.
Wow, incredible. So if there's someone listening to us this morning that's struggling with this, what would be the first step, do you think, that they need to do? Jeannie, I'll go back to you.
I would have them go to reclaimsexualhealth.com and a spouse going to navigatebetrayal.com. And if they want to reach us, they can reach us through that, but that's actually under the ministry we've somewhat retired from. So they can reach us at homemadeholiness.com, and we can steer them in some of the right direction. But my number one thing is go to Our Lady of Champion, make a pilgrimage there.
Oh, that's a great place. I love that place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, that's when Bishop Ricken was getting the approval for that. He told us, and that's why we're the only people that he's consecrated to her. And he said, because when he was in that process, the Blessed Mother let him know this would be the site of sexual healing.
Wow.
And we have witnessed that firsthand. And so we've also opened up a wonderful new retreat place called Lumen Christi Farm. It's a working sheep farm.
What aren't you guys doing?
We just got our fingers.
You've told me like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different. Mamma mia! Do you sleep at all?
Well, we
God
don't, but it's
bless
awesome because we have just so many our fingers in so many different pots. But we don't have to do all the work anymore. We retired from administration, not from ideas.
You're making me tired.
Yeah, but this farm is just absolutely phenomenal because Our Lady appeared to Adele Bryce, a young woman, and told her to teach these children, gather the children, and teach them in this wild country. And she traveled for about 50 miles around that area. And this farm is within that. So we're pretty sure Adele Bryce actually probably taught on the very land that we're now teaching at. And it's a working sheep farm because what we discovered working with families and caught up in this at any age is that we forgot how to be sheep. God told us that he didn't say we were these, pull yourself up by your bootstraps people. He said we were sheep. And sheep really need direction. And so we've lost what that means because most of us don't live around sheep. So, inviting people, make a pilgrimage to the shrine, come and stay at the sheep farm and learn more about being a sheep and good shepherd and what that's all about. And the Blessed Mother will take it from there.
Yeah. Wow. How much of this will you be covering? I'm glad you're on Father Mitch's program tonight, too, because there's so much more I'm sure you can discuss. I'm sure you'll be discussing some of the same things, but again, what do you want to concentrate on this evening, and what else would you tell folks to look for this evening when you're on with Father Mitch that they may not hear today?
Well, I think, sadly, we can say that our youngest daughter, is going through this same crisis right now. Mm-hmm. And so I would speak to someone like her. Her husband left her with 5 young children. The youngest has 1. For infidelity issues. And her phrase, after growing up in our home and being part of, our experiences, her response immediately, through tears, was to say to us, "I will not let Satan steal my joy." And if we had to put into one phrase, when she said that, we were like, wow, and I'm going to get emotional telling you this, that when, your pain has purpose, it was there for our daughter, and that's what we want to share with other people. Satan is after the joy of living, after the joy of family life. And so don't let Satan steal your joy. And there is hope, there is healing. There are a lot of people out there wanting to help someone who's caught up in this or who's being affected by this. And you're not alone, and that people are there to help you.
How do you weave in, and Bruce, we have about 2 minutes left, how do you weave in the Catholic faith into your ministry?
Well, for me, it was absolutely wonderful because I had come from Protestant background. So when I fell in love with the Catholic faith and found out all there was to offer, really, like the communion of saints is one thing that I very, very often depend on, because just to know that there is help on both sides of the veil is very important, I believe. And I think that, looking at the saints that are, used as symbols of purity nowadays, things like Maria Goretti and even...
her feast day was just the other day.
Yes, it was just the other day. We look at those, and young people can especially identify with those younger saints as well. I really think the Catholic faith has the whole picture. And certainly the sacraments, certainly the sacrament of reconciliation is a very, very big thing. It was big for me. It's big for anybody who wants to be able to overcome their sins, because we need to recognize the truth. And so much of our life has been lived in lies, that in order to begin to heal, you have to first find the truth.
Right.
And that's where you can find the truth, is going through a very good confession, and then starting from there, looking for the answers to the healing.
Amen. Well, you two are such gifts. Thank you for your sacrifice, your witness, and your courage to share your own situation to help others grow. So if folks want information, in addition to watching This Evening with Father Mitch, what's the main website again? And Jeannie, I'll go back to you.
I would say to go to reclaimsexualhealth.com and also to homemadeholiness.com for prevention.
Okay. And folks can also maybe have you speak at their parish, or you still doing retreats?
We do most of our work now right around the shrine. No, the shrine.
Oh, on the shrine.
So we have people come to us because we want them to make that pilgrimage.
Well, God bless you both. And you should rest on the beach, though, once in a while. You deserve it.
We will.
All right? Just like the Pope. He's taking a break at Castle Gandolfo. You can go to the lake. You're in Wisconsin. It's beautiful.
All right. Thanks.
God bless you
Thank
both.
you.
Look forward to seeing you tonight on Father Mitch. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning into hour number 2 of Catholic Connection, this hour on EWTN's Radio Extra. And don't forget, our wonderful couple, Bruce and Jeannie Hanneman, are going to be on Father Mitch program live tonight, every Wednesday. And then tomorrow, speaking of the wonderful Father Mitch Bacco, he will join us for Cultural Connections. So much to discuss. We will see what he'll like to talk about tomorrow. There's so many different issues out there in the news. And I just am so proud of these two folks, Bruce and Jeannie, and the work that they're doing. And here they are in their 70s, in their early 70s, and making such a difference. And, I think it's a personal decision. A lot of people, when they get to that age, they want to retire, and they want to retire full-time and maybe just relax, and they certainly deserve that. We all deserve and need R&R to build that into our lives, even if we're still working. But to be able to turn their misery into ministry is huge. And I think a lot of us can do that. We don't realize it. And I forgot to ask them, there's so many questions I had that I didn't get to, that they probably, the first time they gave their testimony, or the first time they decided to come forward with their own situation related to sexual health, even though they were hesitant because they were wondering what people would think, I can almost guarantee that there were a number of people who said, us too. So anyway, a beautiful ministry. We're also going to be talking with Andrea Picotti-Bear tomorrow, and we're going to have an update and a big news story we're following regarding Planned Parenthood funding. All of that plus you on a Thursday morning. Have a great Wednesday. God bless.